Viracocha, the god who returned to the sea. In the Andes, when the night barely withdraws and dawn caresses the sacred surface of Lake Titicaca, the wind carries an ancient echo. It is a respectful murmur, a name transmitted through generations, wrapped in the aura of mystery and devotion. Viracocha. The name slips through the cold air. For the sages of the highlands, it is not just a word, it is memory, it is presence. Viracocha, the great creator, the founder, the lord of water and light, is the paradigm of origins, not only theirs, but of everything that breathes and rests under the Andean sun. They say that when the earth was still shapeless and chaos ruled, in the deep blue waters of Titicaca an extraordinary event occurred. A silhouette emerged from the lake, robust, majestic, wrapped in radiance hard to describe. Viracocha, they say, rose from the mist as the sun emerges after a stormy night. With his hands he shaped the mountains, traced the rivers, gave names to the flowers. The first men, clumsy and afraid, watched that being wrapped in a glow of gold or in the clarity of dawn, depending on who tells the story. His skin, they said, reflected all the colors of the sunrise, but Viracocha did not appear as a tyrant or a distant deity. He did so walking among the men and women of the highlands, approaching them as one of their own, with humility and respect. Long before the Incas carved palaces in Cusco or any Spanish chronicler wrote his surprised name, the peoples of the highlands already recognized him as a teacher. Because Viracocha not only created the physical world, he became a bearer of knowledge. His days and nights passed traveling among villages, talking with those who received him. He sat beside the sowers and taught them when and how to plant the potato, how to listen to the cycle of rains, how to protect the fields from wind and frost. He showed them the art of agriculture, revealing the secrets of quinoa, corn, and other crops that before him were untamable. Under his guidance, the land became fertile, and men learned that the true harvest was gratitude. Thus were born the first rituals and offerings, but he was not only a master of the earth. Viracocha also gave them the gift of the word. He taught them symbols, marks in stone and clay that served not only to count, but to transmit memory and tell stories. With him was born the Proto-Andean writing, threads and knots, stones and carvings, records that still amaze the modern world. He taught how to remember and how not to forget. His main teaching, however, was respect and reciprocity. The idea that every human action impacts Pachamama, the Mother Earth, and the gods who inhabit her. He spoke of balance, that just as man takes from the earth, he must give back with songs, work, and gratitude. Everything created is my child, he said. Nothing must be hurt unjustly. Respect the small life of the insect and the greatness of the condor. Be guardians of water and fire. His voice was deep, like thunder awakening mountains. Some said it could be heard even from afar when the storm fell. There was a unique peace in his presence. Animals calmed around him. Plants seemed to grow greener where his shadow rested. There was more. Viracocha taught about the sky, the constellations reflected in the dark waters, and the messages hidden by the moon when it changes its face. He helped the sages and priests, the Amautas, to calculate the cycles of the sun and the coming of the seasons, so that neither drought nor gale would ever surprise his people. Those who learned from him noticed his particular way of teaching. He never imposed truth, but guided through questions. What do you see when you look at the mountain? What do you hear when the wind blows? Thus, each person found answers within themselves, expanding the circle of wisdom. Soon the peoples of the highlands prospered, weaving networks of trade and brotherhood. Art flourished with new colors and forms. Fortresses and temples grew, aligned with the dictates of the stars and the sun. The word of Viracocha, not only in voice but in example, became the sacred law. With time, travelers from distant lands began to hear of that teacher god who walked without escorts, offering solutions where there were only problems. His wisdom crossed mountains and lakes. Some said they saw him depart toward other lands, to take his knowledge beyond the Andean realm. Others claim he always returned to Titicaca, where he spent long hours meditating on the shores, speaking with the water birds. But, as with every cycle, the end of his visible stay arrived. There are many versions, each recreated by the songs of grandmothers and the murals of ancient temples. Some tell that, seeing his mission complete and his teachings blooming, Viracocha gathered those he most cherished. Others narrate that it was a serene morning that marked his farewell. He looked toward the horizon, where the fresh waters of Titicaca seemed to merge with the firmament. He walked slowly, leaving footprints in the sand until he immersed himself gradually into the lake. As the sun rose, the silhouette of Viracocha seemed to dissolve in the brilliance of the water. It was then that, according to legend, he said, "I will return when humanity remembers its true origin." Since then, his promise has been an inseparable part of Andean memory. Not as a threat nor as a judgment, but as hope. Because, according to the sages, the return of Viracocha does not depend on the calendar or chance, but on the awakening of each consciousness. One day, when people live with dignity and humility, when respect for the earth and for oneself becomes law again, then the great teacher will return. In Tiahuanaco, ancient city whose mystery remains unsolved for archaeologists, the carved stones are counted like pages of an old book. Each depiction, each symbol, tells scenes of Viracocha guiding apprentices, holding staffs of command, or blessing maize fields. The stone stelae, the monoliths, seem to keep the trace of his steps. What was Viracocha then? A god from the heavens, forger of men and things, bearer of light? Or perhaps a sage from a vanished civilization, who left behind advances and values far beyond his time? Or maybe, as some Amautas suggest, Viracocha is, in essence, the spiritual sun that never dies, appearing through those who act with justice and compassion. These are eternal questions. But what is undoubtable is the validity of his promise and his teaching. In every Andean community, in every field, in the humble ritual of giving thanks before eating or drinking, Viracocha lives. In the gaze of those who seek wisdom without pride, in the care of the smallest life in the countryside, in the joy of sharing bread. There are no shortages of stories from travelers who, in moments of crisis, have felt the presence of the teacher. A counsel in dreams, a light on the horizon, an unexpected answer found. We are not alone, say the sages. Viracocha watches. Today, before Lake Titicaca and its mysteries, elders and priests still sing chants at dawn. They invoke his name, not to ask for miracles, but to remember the path. Perhaps, as the elders repeat, Viracocha never left. He only waits patiently for us to learn to listen to the call, to cultivate humility and respect, to remember what centuries ago he taught not only with words but by example. Everything that exists is sacred creation. Be worthy of carrying it. The myth then remains open. And while the first rays of the sun touch the ancient waters, the name of Viracocha will continue, luminous, traveling between dreams and awakenings. Hidden at times, evident at others, but always, always, ready to return by the same path of the waves, when we are ready for his message. Because in the Andes where earth and sky touch, the great teacher never truly said farewell. He only walks on, silently, waiting, for humanity to remember who it is. If you enjoyed this documentary, give us a like, ring the bell, and subscribe to rewrite our history.